So, good morning to all. Uh, Welcome to the lecture session of object-oriented programming using C++. And in this session, we're going to discuss about class and objects. Class and objects are the foundation of object-oriented programming. If you have understood how these things works, what is an object and what is a class, okay, so you are very clear about how we can do various operations, how we can apply various features of object-oriented programming on these topics, okay. So to recall, I think if you remember, we have we in our offline classes we have discussed about the things which have physical or logical existence are objects. Okay, anything we exist physically or logically, like a particular, let's say our DCA department or so they are logically exist. Okay, so physically buildings exist. Okay, so they can be an object. So a class will actually combine, categorize, will combine all the objects together into a single, a single category, you can say a single class. When we say class, we say also a category. Okay, how this they all the objects belongs to the class will share the same property. That you must remember. Means whatever attributes we define, okay, those attributes will remain same for all the objects of this class, of this particular class. Okay, so another way we can say that object is said to be an instance of a class. Okay, a particular instance. Say we pick up, let's as an example, as I said, that car. Okay, so car could be a class. Okay, then Auto 800 could be one instance of a car. So car, we might define some properties of car, some attributes of car, that okay, a car can be identified with, may contain these properties. So a particular instance of car will contain the values for all these properties. Okay, and remember that there cannot be an object like student or professor. They generally define a class, they do not define a particular object. So when I say a student object, I must tell the values. I must say, okay, means a student. Okay, what is the student? Let's say a student should have name. So in this object, we can say it's an object of student, of type student. Then I must define a name, that okay, this object of student having this name, having this roll number. So an object is identified by those values which are assigned to that attribute. All right, so student, professor can be classes. They cannot be any objects. All right, so objects will be one instance of a student, means a student with some particular set of values. And okay, so how to define class in C++. So this is the template or the generic structure for defining a class in C++. So class followed by class name, then we begin with the open curly brace, then access specifier 1. So there can be multiple access specifiers. So first access specifier followed by a colon, then we define the field definition. All field definition are similar to the variable declaration or function declaration followed by a semicolon. All right, and the class definition ends just like the structure ends with the open, close curly brace followed by a semicolon. That, so this is the definition is almost similar to the structure in C. So here is an example. So class, first class. All right, so we have two access specifiers here. Okay, that is, we say the private and the public. All right, we'll discuss about them. Okay, then we have then fields. So all the things which are there after this, they are the fields. So these two fields belongs to this particular access specifier category. These two fields belongs to this access specific category. That's how it is placed. So it is advised that you place them in this order, so that the looking and should be very clear from looking at the class definition, that okay, which fields are private, which fields are public. Now what are these public and private? Okay, they are access specifier, or also known as the visibility of class members. All right, so when you say visibility, means it's about accessibility. All right, so we have actually, there are three type of access specifier in C++, that is public, private and protected, right? And the field that are marked private can be accessed only via the functions that are member of the class. Okay, it's like putting a restriction on the direct access. Okay, directly accessing or modifying those fields, okay, which are belongs to this class. Also, we're saying that when we make private means they are only can be accessible by the member function, means the functions which are member of the class, they can access them directly. No other, like in main we were previously, when we define fields in structure, we're able to directly access them in the main, and not only main, any function. But here now it's a restriction. If the fields are private to a class, we can only access them, we cannot access them directly. Okay, we will access them via the member functions only. We'll show a demonstration of this afterwards. Okay, so in first class, data 1, data 2 are the fields that are private fields. Now if we make public, then can be accessed by anyone. It can be like we mostly make the functions in the put in the public part, so that it can be called, it can be invoked by anyone. All right, so these are the data members which are private. Okay, now what are the restrictions on data members? Okay, so when we're defining a data member inside class, so a non-static member variable cannot have an initializer. So we can just like we are declaring variable we are initializing in our normal programming while we're writing normal problem or a program, right? So that we don't do here in a class. In a class, when we declare a variable, declare a member variable, we generally don't initialize them. Okay, if you do initialize them, you will get a compilation error. Okay, so unless until it's a static member, we cannot initialize it. We'll come to static member later. All right, so no member can be an object of the class that is being declared. Okay, so a member can be pointed to, and so remember that same class, we cannot have a member as a member, because we can as we can declare variables, we can declare objects also, right? So we cannot have an object, okay, as a member of a class which will of the same type. Okay, so that is not possible. All right, and no member can be declared as auto and external, and in general all data members generally we keep as a private. That is the restriction we made. Now the second point, I just want to show you that the second point is this, that so the second point indicates that when we declare data fields in this way, we cannot have a member, let's say, because here we can declare any variables, we can declare structure variables, we can declare even objects here, but not object of this class. So I cannot do here first class, okay, OB, I can do that. Okay, it's saying that this is, so we can declare a pointer which will hold an address of our first class type. We have address of the first class type object, but we cannot have an object of the same class. Let's like a recursive object inside. We cannot say recursive here, an object of the same type. This is not allowed. We can have other class, second class. So suppose we have declared a class called second class. Yes, another object could be member of another class. That is possible. Okay, anything, but not the same class, not an object of the same class. That is there. If you give it, you will get an error. Okay, so that's the idea here. And we have member functions here. So generally we define member functions which generally through which we generally access the private data members of the class. We access them, we modify them, we update them, okay, and we also display them. All right, so all the things we do through private members only. We in object-oriented programming practice, we hardly allow some data which are meant public, and which means the data of a member of a class that is directly accessed by any function in the global scope. Okay, that is hardly done. That is really violating the properties of object-oriented programming. Okay, so we only provide the access to, or if you want to access it, the access has to be done via the member function of the class, not through anyone. So why functions are public and data are private? So that is we have partially answered. So the clear answer is the data are private to protect them accessing from any scope outside its own class. Okay, protecting in the sense that direct access. Okay, we are saying that when making private, protecting them is direct modification, accidental modification, that is to be protected. Okay, means whenever you want to modify, you declare an object of that class, then through that object you call the member function to do the relevant operation, relevant modification or updation or access. Okay, so member functions are public because yes, I have to perform various tasks upon the data members of an object of the particular class. So I need to access them. So if I need to access them, I have to invoke the member function. If member functions are private, they belongs to the class, okay, and they can be accessed only via within the the scope of the class, then it's no use of no use. How can we make modifications? So member functions are made public so that they can be invoked from anywhere outside the class, and via them we can make changes to the various fields of the object. Okay, so member functions are a public medium for performing operation on private data. So this is a very clear meaning of why we make data members private and why make the function public. So they actually we can access, but the member functions are the medium to access the private data. So whenever there is a data, we are channelizing the access to the member, not that anybody can directly access and make a modification. So that is prohibited. So next, about member functions, note that the member functions set data and show data are the definition contained within class definition. So sometime depend upon the size of the member. If the member functions are one-line functions, we can keep them within the class. So automatically when the compiler will compile it, that member function will become inline function. They will be converted into inline function. But if the functions are large, it is preferred to define outside the class. Okay, and generally which are not normal inline, which are defined outside. Why? To show a abstract view of the class. So it means if you define the functions, they will take some line. Suppose one function takes 50 lines, another function takes 100 lines. So what happened? Your class definition is extended, it becomes lengthy. So looking at class, somebody cannot visualize that what are the attributes, what are the behavior of the class. You know, we have already discussed about any object will be defined by some properties and by attributes and behavior. So to have a looking at the class, okay, it's like looks like a card, okay, just like a card, a class card. So that looking at that, we can say that yes, this object will have these attributes, and these are the behavior, this is the action can be performed. All right. So to keep that intact, okay, we generally define and C++ also has a provision to define all the member functions outside the scope of the class. Okay, how is by using scope resolution operator. We already have definition, we have learned about the definition of namespace. Okay, so namespace helps us to define any the function or function of one scope outside any other scope. Okay, we will clearly mention its scope so that we can define it. Okay, so this is our first class. So how to create object. Now class is defined. So when you define a class, a template is ready, just like a frame is ready, a frame for making idol is ready. Now you want to make idol, you want to create an idol, you have to create objects. So once you create object, actually the class doesn't exist runtime. In runtime, objects exist. Suppose say S1 S2 are the two objects of the class, so they exist runtime. Okay, having the properties means S1 will contain two data field, that is data1, data2, and S1 can be invoked via all these things can be modified by calling the function set data, show data. Remember, functions will be common to all the objects. Okay, not that we create a separate functions for all the functions. They only invoke them. Okay, so they will have a single copy of function. All right, so that's how. So when objects exist, they exist in the runtime, so they bear all the properties, all the attribute that we define. So S1 S2 will contain the data members. All right, so objects actually participate in the program operation. Why we declare object? So these objects will help us to store the data of the class type, of a particular class type. Suppose a student, I want to store student data. So to store student data, I need to create object, okay, to for let's say student number 1 data, student number 2 data. So that's how, so objects are required in those cases. So depend upon how many data I have to do, I have to store, that many objects need to be created. Okay, so definition objects are very simple to defining the variables. We have already seen this here. Okay, so class name space object, okay, object 1 semicolon, object 2 semicolon, in that way, right? So next, calling the member function. Now calling a normal function, we know that we call the function by using the function name and passing the parameter the exactly in the order that are required. So here take an example. If set data, show data are not member functions, we'll simply call set data, will pass two parameters, those has to be integer type, right? That's the point. But when it comes to member functions, okay, member functions are always called, okay, via an object or with reference to an object. Okay, because member functions are going to perform the operation on the member data members, right? The data member of a particular class or particular object. So when you want to perform some operation on data member, so data member of whom? Question is that when I say that, okay, this set data is going to set the data. So okay, set data of whom? So set data of a particular object. So always member functions are called, okay, with reference to an existing object. For example, here I can call S1 set data, means now the S1 data function is called but via with reference to S1. So what happens when you call like this? When you call like this, the S1 object, you will say the S1 is calling set data. So S1's data members can be accessed directly, okay, inside this function call. When it means in this function call, when you're making this function, inside this, when we refer a data member, we are actually directly, when we are referring the data member of S1. Okay, that's the point here. All right, so the dot operator is in use again, just like your in structure, how you refer the data members, exactly that way. So an object or the structure variable dot data member, that the same way here, when we want to call a member function, we also use the same operation, that object dot the member function. Okay, so member functions are also called messages. Like, you know, you are sending a message here. What do? We are sending a message, okay, to the S1 here. So suppose main is calling here. Let's say main is making this call S1 dot set data. So main is sending a message, okay, to the class, to the object S1 via this set data. It is sending a message that, okay, you set the data, kind of thing. Okay, so this is the difference, the basic, the now when it comes to C++, structure and class, or both are almost of similar property, or having the same property. Only difference is that by default all the members are public in structure, and whereas all the members are private by default in class. Okay, so when we don't mention any access specifier, it indicates that these data members are private. Now coming to the defining a member function outside the class. So as we say that if the functions are lengthy, cannot be defined within one line, so we can define them outside the class using this format. The format is already given to you now. Okay, so return type of the function, then we say that which class. So they are the member functions, they belongs to some class. So we mention the scope, okay, that is class name, then scope resolution operator, indicating that this is not a global, because generally we define these functions in the global scope. So if you define a function in global, so that is a global, the function of the global scope. Okay, a generic, a global function, we can say, anybody can call it. But if you don't mention this, that becomes simply a global function. Okay, a generic function, normal function, non-member function. So when we mention this part, the class name, then it indicates that no, this is function definition. This definition belongs to the function name this of the class this. Okay, so scope resolution operator, that is our double colon, indicate that the scope of the function is restricted to class name only. It is not meant for everybody. It's not a global function, even if it has been defined in the global scope. Okay, so various classes may define members with the same name, because we can resolve the scope by this class name. Okay, so I can have, let's say, student class with display detail. I can also have the let's say box class with display detail. Okay, means same function name could be kept. Okay, because they are defined in different scopes. That is the benefit of defining the scope. Okay, and member functions can access private data of the class. Okay, and member function can call another member function directly. So when I need to call another member function within a member function, so we don't need a dot, because this member function might have already been called with reference to an object. Okay, so I don't have to call it. So indirectly that object only, we're calling this member function indirectly, we're making the second call with reference to that object only. Okay, so here is the example. All right, so we have a class here with the name box. We have 3 field, double length, double breadth, double height. Okay, 3 fields are there, and all you see that there is no access specifier, so they all are private. Okay, then we have a member function as public, that is set length, set breadth, set height, and get. You will find that all the member functions that I generally define. Okay, I followed one now the book of the Dadle and Dadle. So they define all member functions should be in the format of set and get, because they either, when those are modified, we'll come to that definition later on in this slide. So they modify it. So set indicate that they are setting the values, they are modifiers. Get means simply they access the value and return the values. All right, so they generally they access the value, they don't modify it. So whenever there is a modification goes, so the member function should generally named with a set at the beginning, set length, set breadth, set height, set volume. Suppose we have a set volume, so set is generally meant for setting a particular field of the class member. All right, so you can see here, so set length, we are setting the length. So to set the length, we pass a variable value, so that value is there in the len variable. So inside the function, it's simply assigning the len value to the length. The length of whom? The length of the object which is called this member function. Similarly here, breadth of the member function, so the object which is called. So it is you see that we are accessing the length, breadth, height directly within the member function, so they automatically represent these fields of the object that has been called. Okay, so get volume, we compute the volume for a particular object, so that object have some length, breadth, and height, so we are computing volume and returning to the calling function. We are not storing anywhere. Okay, so here is the main function which is using this definition of a box. All right, so we are creating 2 objects here, box space box1, box space box2. Okay, we are creating a variable volume to store the volume when we compute the volume of each box. All right, then box1 set length, box1 set breadth, set height. So by calling this member function, we are setting the value, okay, of length, breadth, and height of which object? The box1. Okay, so when it is called set length, it is called within set length, when length equal to length, so this is length of box1 for the first time. Okay, breadth of box1, height of box1. Okay, when these member functions are called via box2 with reference to box2, so the length, breadth, and height of box2 are modified, are updated by 12, 13, and 10. All right, now volume, so compute volume, so box1 dot get volume. So when it accesses length, breadth, and height inside inside this volume, it is going to access these 3 fields of box1 for this call, and for this call it is going to access the length, breadth, and height of the box2. That's how it works. Okay, so whenever we call a member function with reference to an object, when we access the member directly, we access the member of that calling object. Okay, we say, or the object which has invoked the member function. Okay, so what happens in runtime actually? So let's say we have a class box with three fields. So in the runtime, whenever we create object box1, box2, box3, so 3 places, 3 memory spaces are reserved. Okay, with the 3 fields, length, breadth, and height, depend upon the type. Okay, so your double means 8 bytes. Okay, and depend upon the type, what that many memory will reserve. Okay, this is how it happens. So box1, box2, box3, for every object memory is created, and the memory is reserved for all the fields within that. Okay, just like other variables. Now how to referring the field, so how it refer the field, just I was explaining now. Okay, so when we call get volume, let's say length, breadth and height. So when we call this get volume, just like box1 dot get volume. Okay, so here get volume is called with reference to box1. So we can say it refers to the member instances of box1. So whenever we access the data member within a member function, okay, so they refer to the instances of the object through which this member function has been called. That you must remember. Okay, so here when let's say for the first column is called, so it is the length of box1, breadth of box1, height of box1 when it is getting executed. For the second time when it called, okay, box2 dot get volume, when again the control will jump here, at that time it is length of box2, breadth of box2 and height of box2. Okay, that's how it works. All right, so means indirectly we can say it, the when we calling, because we created a box here, how the length are accessed here, length and breadth, because this length is length of box1, length of breadth, but where the box1 is created, box1 has just belongs to the scope of main. So implicitly, or we can say by default, okay, we don't need to explicitly do that, by default all the member of the box, because when we have created a box here, so that means memory reserved in the memory reserved, okay, and its scope is only main. So all the data member of box, okay, an object is passed implicitly when it makes a call to the member function. Okay, so by default, that means by default all the member of the calling objects are available here inside the function which has been called. Okay, that you must remember. So accessing here, as I say that, okay, accessing. So when we access, just what I explained, okay, when I access set length, set breadth means, okay, I am accessing the member of the, I'm setting the value of the box1. So when I am say box1, so it is setting the value of box1. When I'm calling, when I'm accessing the data through set length through box2, so yes, I'm able to access the data member of box2. So we say implicitly passing. This is how it works. All right, so when you make some modification, automatically that the field of that box, okay, field of that, not box here, field of that object, okay, will be get automatically updated. All right, so next, so as I was telling that we can categorize the class member functions. Okay, we can make them type. So generally three groups are there, broad categories are there: accessors, mutators and manager functions. So accessor allow us to access the field of the class, access it, okay, do some operation on that, but not change it. Okay, no changes are made. Okay, accessors do not change the fields. Okay, they don't make changes. Mutators allow us to change the fields of the classes. Okay, generally we do set length, set breadth. So we use a set word before that to indicate that these are the mutators. Okay, then managers, special kind of functions like constructor, destructor, which are automatically invoked, okay, for creating object, creating object or destroying a class object. Okay, so we'll come to the manager function later on. Okay. All right, so this is how we categorize them. I hope it is very clear. So why do you bother about accessor mutator? So, and why we provide show data? Why not just make a member field publicly available? So by restricting the accessor, okay, and mutator, we can possibly to change the underlying detail regarding the class without changing how people interact with the class. Okay, so if, as I was saying, that sometime, when in the mutator only, suppose you are modifying the values, in that time only you also do show data, print the data. So what happens that you are combining two tasks. Okay, so you can, so user generally, when user want to get the data, so okay, want to see the data or access the data, it doesn't have to want to see the data, it doesn't have to modify it, you don't have to call it. Okay, so we can make changes without affecting how the people are interacting. So people generally interact with the data through the accessors, right? So mutator can do operation, they can make changes to the object meta members without affecting the interaction. Okay, but if you combine these with the interaction, it will affect the interaction. Whenever you make some changes, it is going to affect the interaction. All right, so that's why when you separate accessors and mutators and can update, make changes to the data without affecting the accessors, so the people who have, or the functions which are accessing this data. So if user interact using only accessors, okay, and mutators, then we can change things inside a class without affecting user code. Okay, so we will only changes will be done and access will be done through them. So user can, whenever I need to make some modification in the mutator class, I don't have to affect the user code. User code need not to do anything. User will do the same call, that is set length or set breadth. Inside set length, set breadth, I can make changes without affecting that. So, but if I will not do that, I will have to make the change in the parameters, number of parameters or something. Suppose you're displaying, so that has to be done within the calling. Okay, so to no, without affecting the user code, which is user code means generally the main function, say, or the function which are using the function, or the program that is using this class definition, they will not get affected. The you can say the behavior will remain the same. The nature of the implementation of the behavior can be changed, okay, by using mutator functions. Okay, that is the idea. So it is also recommended for all the students that they follow this practice. Now, just like array of structures, we can create array of objects also. All right, so it refers to an array of variables that are of type some defined class. Okay, so just like a structure, so array of object of class, this we say like that. Okay, we use the term like that. Okay, similarly, similar to other arrays, we can use index operator or dot operators, index operator and dot operator to access individual element. When I say element, means data member of an array of objects. Okay, so here is an example box. We are creating an array of 10 objects of type box. Okay, and see in box 5 width, so we are taking input the width of the box 5, box number 5, right? Actually the box number 6, right? Because index begins from the 0, right? Box number 6. But this is only possible if you're doing this in the main. This is only possible when they are public. Generally it doesn't work, they has to be public, right? Because we are accessing the data member directly here. That is not, this is only meant for demonstration, okay, to show that how we can access the data member when we have created an array of objects. Okay, this is very similar to the structure in C. So here this particular program demonstrates the use of objects as function argument. Just like I've shown you some days ago that how we can pass an structure variable as a parameter. Similar way we can pass here. Okay, we can pass objects also, because as I told that all the input output if you can to be segregated from the operation, other operation. So add distance, and I say add distance, it should do only add distance. It shouldn't take the input of the distance 1, distance 2, then add it. No, input you take it, keep it within the main, or use another function, another member function or a function to take the input. Okay, add distance member function should do only the addition operation and return the result of the addition. That should be there. You shouldn't you shouldn't start taking the input for the distance 2 or distance 2, 3 here inside this. Okay, by the time these two parameters are passed here, it should be ready. So distance, add distance should get two objects, 2 of distance to be added, and it will add it. Its job is to add it. Okay, so let's see how this program works. So we define a class distance here, and there are two private members, feet and inches. Okay, feet is of integer type, inches is of floating point type, and yes, we implement here get distance member function. You say I'm keeping this to you, that you can implement get distance. Okay, so that you can return the distance to the calling function in terms of feet and inches. Okay, and here add distance. Okay, so we assume that we have I see in the within the defining member function, it takes two objects of distance type. Add distance member function which take two objects of distance type. All right, So let's see implement. So we assume that whenever this object distance is at distance is called, two distance are already there. All right. So and it has some values in terms of feet and inches. Okay. Okay, I just made a small change here, that yes, there should be get distance and set distance. Both we need it, because to get distance we can access the distance, and to set distance, for setting distance, okay, we can set the distance. So yeah, we are not bothering about that. Okay, we assume that this is already been implemented. Let us focus on a member function which will accept objects as argument, that is add distance. So see that what happens. So here is the definition of add distance, and see that the add distance is defined outside the scope of the class. Okay, so this is defined with reference to using this scope resolution operator. So distance scope resolution operator. So this indicates that this function doesn't belong to the global scope. This actually belongs to the scope of distance. So it indicates that this is a member function of distance class. Okay, so when it is called right here, so we assume that by the time we call a distance, the distance 1, distance 2 are created and initialized. Okay, so this distance 1, there are two objects part, because add distance are going to add two distance objects. Okay, going to add distance and store in another object. Okay, these are all objects. So we assume, for this condition, we assume that we pass two distance objects as argument. These two distance objects will be added and stored in the member data members of the object which has called it, with reference to the call has been made. So distance 3 is calling add distance. So the sum of distance 1, dst1 and dist2 will be added and will be stored in the data members of the object dist3 or distance 3, you can say. Okay, so when this function is called, okay, all the member of distance 3 are passed implicitly, that is not mentioned here, and explicitly you are passing object distance 1 and distance 2. Okay, these are passed implicitly, but who is making the call? Call is made by distance 3. Okay, so call is made with reference to distance 3 object. So along with the implicit values data members of distance 3, we are passing two arguments here, distance 1, distance 3. Okay, but so we can access the data member of distance 1 and distance 2 here. We receive them as a distance 2, distance 3 here, just to indicate that the difference. So what happens here? Distance 2 equal to dist1. So d2 will contain all the data of dist1. Similarly, d3 will contain all the data of dist1. It will be making a copy. We are making a copy, copying an object of dist1 to d2 and dist2 to d3. Right? So now whenever I need to access the data member of d2 and d3, I need to use the normal operation, normal way, as we do outside, because we are not invoking this method with respect to d1, d2, d3. Okay, only through one object. So these are just like normal variables. So when we access them, we need to access through the dot operation. So inches equal to d2 inches plus d3 inches. This indicates that the inches value of d2 is added with inches value of d3 and stored in the inches of the object which is called it. So who has called it? Distance 3. So stored in the inches data member of distance 3 object. Okay, then feet equal to 0 means this, when I refer directly inches and feet is mean the directly data members, that we are referring to the data member of the calling object, okay, with reference to the function call or in function call has been made. Okay, so when inches is greater than 12, we make inches by separated by 12 and add to feet. Then finally the feet of the object 3 is updated by the sum of the feet of distance 2 and distance 3. Just a simple operation of adding two distance in terms of feet and inches. Okay, so and returns the function. All right, so when you return back, when the control returns from this to this, distance 3, data members are updated, right? Updated with the sum value. right? But only pass the copy of distance1, distance2, and this dist1, dist2 are not also affected in the main, because we pass a copy of this is called by value, right? We are passing a copy of this. So this is how we can pass an object. All right, pass an object and get it. So distance, when we print here, suppose we will print here, we will get the access, we'll access the distance value of d3, we'll get the sum of d2 and d3, means actually distance 1 and distance dist2 1 and dist2 3 2 inside the 3. Okay, just I reverse this one here. All right, so sum of dist1 and dist2 is stored in the dist3. This is how we pass objects here, pass objects to a member function. So here we have shown an example that we pass the object of the same type. So we can pass object of different type also. Suppose you have defined other classes, okay, some other classes, we can pass the objects a similar way that we have passed with the same object. Okay. Now coming to the manager function, right? So we have seen accessors, we have seen mutators. Let us see some manager function. So sometime, however, it is convenient to if the objects can be initialized itself when it is first created. You know, till now when we create object, they are uninitialized. We need to use some member function or okay to initialize them, because you know we generally don't direct access the data members inside the calling functions, okay, or the main function. So we generally you take the help of a member function to initialize them, right? So if it is possible to initialize them automatically, that will definitely good. Okay, so without needing a separate function, a single member function to make an initialization, okay, that can be good. Okay, so it would also be better if some predefined tasks that need to be performed every time we create an object are done automatically when object is created. Okay, this is also essential thing. Some tasks are also done when we object, and other than assigning the values, we also sometimes perform some predefined tasks that like memory allocation, etc., etc. So that also should be done when object is created. No need to take help of a separate statement or separate statement in the main, or no, separately call a additional function to do that. Okay, should be done automatically when so and also how about triggering some prevent task when the object is destroyed, because when we create an object dynamically, we can also destroy it. So when it destroyed, we want to do some task. That also, these all are provided, these solutions are provided by constructors in distance, the special, which is the special type of functions, special type of member functions. Okay, we'll begin with constructor. So automatic initialization is carried out using a special member function called constructor. So when we have defined constructor, we take help of this constructor to automatically initialize the data members. So what happens actually, a constructor is a member function that is executed automatically, okay, or called automatically whenever an object is created. Now, provided you have to define what type of constructor should be called. Okay, so therefore it substitutes the task of defining member function for initialization and explicitly calling them. Okay, sometime in some you will see that they are abbreviated as CTOR. Okay, CTOR is referred to constructor. Some books they refer these terms. Okay, standard books. So the features, how you distinguish a constructor from a normal member function. So constructors bear the same name as of class, and constructor with no arguments, okay, also known as a default constructor, means suppose you have a member function with the same name as a class and without any argument, we say that they are default constructors. Okay, and constructor can't have return type. They don't return it because their job is to initialize, do some initialization task and predefined task when object is created. If no constructor is provided by the programmer, as we have done so far, then compiler provides one default constructor. That his job is to simply create an object and initialize with some null values. Mostly they cannot be inherited through derived class and can call the base class constructor. This will be very clear when we discuss about inheritance, and cannot be virtual also. These are all part of inheritance and polymorphism, and it should always be declared in the public part of structure and class structure. Why? Because we generally create objects outside, generally create the object outside the class scope, inside main or inside another function. So to create an object means we need to invoke the constructors automatically. How the constructors can be invoked automatically? Only when we are allowed to invoke from outside scope. So they are always declared in the public part. Destructors are just opposite to constructor. They are special member function, same as the class name and preceded by a tilde. Okay, just to differentiate from constructors, a tilde, when you see a tilde before the class name, a member function, that is called destructor. So if you class allocate some space on heap, it is always useful to deallocate. So mostly when we do the memory deallocation task in a destructor. Okay, so freeing up the state of object. Okay, so these are called implicitly when automatically object goes out of scope. So means object is destroyed indirectly. Object is destroyed when it destroyed, first of all, when we destroy explicitly by using delete. Okay, or automatically when we go out of the scope, the object has cannot be no more accessible, right? So in that case, in very unusual situation only, okay, does user need to call a destructor explicitly. Destructor are normally not called. We'll see some cases where we explicitly make a call to a particular type of constructors, but not for destructors. Okay, so we have three type of constructor. Okay, so they can be overloaded, like they depend upon the type of parameter we pass it. They are known as they are categorized. Okay, so default constructor, parameterized constructor, and copy constructor. In this session we are going to discuss default and parameterized constructor. Okay, so this is an example of default constructor. When I say default constructor, the constructors doesn't take which have the same name as the class, doesn't take any argument. Okay, so as the name says, default, always whenever an object is created, this job of this constructor is to initialize the object's data member with default values. Okay, so let us begin. So let's say we have a class called counter, and we have only data member, private member, that is unsigned int count. It's keeping a count. Okay, so in the public we see we have highlighted this is a default constructor. Okay, so this is a short form of doing some initializing the data members. Okay, so either we can do counter parenthesis, then curly braces, within that count equal to 0. That is what this is the short way. You write the constructor counter, okay, open and close parenthesis, then followed by a colon. You can put all the data members of the class, because they are separated by comma, and put the initialization value within the parenthesis. Just like if you remember, when you have dynamically created an object and initialize that, okay, at the same time we pass them within the parenthesis. Okay, the same structure is used here. It's a alternate way. It's a shortcut way we said. Also, it is actually when we invoke this particular constructor is invoked automatically, it is setting the count value to 0. That's all it is doing. So then followed by a the empty body of the function. Then we have increment count function, which will increment the value of count. Then we have decrement count to decrement count, and we have another get count to return the value of count, right? So here you can see that. So this is a constructor, default constructor, because it will always assign default value to the data members of an object we create. That's why the name comes default constructor. How it is invoked? Whenever we create an object, okay, without any parameters or something like so, like a simple, just like simple variable. So whenever we write counter C1 comma C2, so it automatically invoke the default constructor. For C1 it invokes first, so the control will jump and come here. So they will execute just like member functions, but the invocation is done automatically. Okay, and similarly C2. See, for C2 again it will become, so both C1 C2 they have only for the only data member count. So and that data member is going to initialize to be 0. Okay, by using this default constructor. Then we can print here, I can see it, then we'll increment and we can see that. Okay, so we are doing again, we are taking the help of get count to print to get the value of the counters initially. Then we are incrementing them. We are incrementing the counter of the object C2 twice, and we are printing again. Okay, let us run it and see. Okay, let's see the output of this. So we have the program here. So VIS4, I think default name is default. So this is our program. So let us run it and see. Okay. All right. So the C1, C2 are created. So by default, the default constructor is invoked and initialize the count value of C1 and C2, C2 0. So when we print it, C1 equal to count, it is 0 and 0. Now after, then we incremented C1 count of C1 once by calling increment count, and we called increment count of C2 twice. Okay, so after that when we print it, we see that C1's counter value is 1 and C2 counter value is 2. Okay, so this is the use of default constructor. Okay, next comes to parameterized constructor. So just like overloading the member functions, okay, member overloading function, we can overload the, because the functions can be overloaded, means any member function can be overloaded, right? So any and so similarly constructor can also be overloaded. So we are overloading a, you can see that we can have constructor with the same name, multiple constructor with the same name. Only need to see that they have different type of argument. Okay, so here when we pass parameter to a constructor, it becomes parameterized constructor. Means we know the initialized value in advance. Whenever we are creating the object, we don't know the value of, okay, what value to be initialized, we generally call default constructor. But when we in advance, we know that, okay, this object should contain this data members values as this and this in advance when the object is created. Okay, then it is always preferable to call use the parameterized constructor. Parameterized constructors are similar to default constructor, only thing is that they take input, they will have arguments. So that's how we can distinguish a parameterized constructor from a default constructor. So this is the parameter constructor, have taking two inputs. One is integer type of fit ft, and then second type is float type and int. Okay, so what we do, we use the second way of initialization, colon fit within bracket ft. So indicate that the ft value is assigned to fit data member, and in argument, okay, in value of argument is assigned to the inches data member. Okay, so depend upon which object is created at this time, that object is initialized to these values. Okay, so this call, okay, this object created invoke the parameterized constructor. Okay, so always compilers match with the way we declare the object creation. Okay, so if you see that for first line, they are dist1, dist3, these two are going to be initialized through default constructor, right? It is initializing fit to 0, inches to 0.0, right? We have already default constructor defined. So but dist2, when we write distance space dist2 and we within parentheses we pass the values 11 and 6.25, so it invokes the, when it is executed, it invokes the parameterized constructor, second one. So what happens, 11 is assigned received as fit ft value, ft variable, and 6.25 is received okay, initialized to in value. So what we do here, fit is assigned to 11 and inches is assigned to 6.25. So this is how we take the help of parameterized constructor to initialize the data members with some initial value that has been known, during the object creation. That is the advantage here. Okay, so parameterized constructor can help you to initialize, so instead of having some default values. Okay, now there is a special case, special way to initialize parameter constructor. We have seen two way. First is the normal way. You can do the normal way also, right? So like for example, if I open the parameterized constructor vi s4, okay, so like you see that either you can do this way. I can see that I have highlighted the shortcut way. Okay, here normally we do this way. All right, we can do this way. All right, I'm combining both of them here. Let me put it here. So one way is that what we can do is that we our you can use the standard way. If you are getting not very, if you're not finding this friendly, you can do this way. Okay, int fit, you take it, and within the function body, because it's a very small one, I am writing in a single line only, fit equal to ft, inches equal to in. This line, this is the shortest version of this one only. Okay, these two are the same, they both do the same task. Okay, both referring to the parameterized constructor of two parameters. Now the parameterized constructor can also be overloaded. Okay, means we can have one parameterized constructor with one value, parameter constructor with two values, three values, depend upon how many variation of initialization we can define. That depend upon us. Okay, so these two are same, these two are same. So you either can define this way or you can define this way, both will work, no problem at all. Okay, now so coming to the third variation of parameter constructor is that, so if a constructor only has one parameter, so assume that you are defining the parameters constructor with only one parameter, then we can use the third way of initializing the value. So we can call it like this. So x, we can define a parameter constructor, so like we have defined here x int j, so a equal to j, or you know the way. So here declaration vary, we can, how can declare that x ob equal to 99. So instead of putting the 99 value within parenthesis, if it is a single value, remember that it only works for a single, when an object contain only single parameter, or it takes only single input. Okay, in that case, okay, only we can write x ob equal to 99. So it is equivalent to writing x, it is equivalent to writing like this, it is equivalent to x ob within parenthesis 99. So these are two, there are two variations. Okay, when we have a parameterized constructor with one parameter, we can call it by either way. Okay, this is the variation. Okay, so if you remember, the functions can take default values, we can combine the default value. Okay, use the default value feature to combine the default constructor and parameterized constructor. See how here. So let's say here I am not bothering about, so I am defining a constructor for box, and there are three, it's a parameterized constructor with default values. Okay, so and there is a default value for all the parameters. That means I may skip all the arguments when I'm calling this, when I'm making a call to this. That means I can take help of this constructor to define to call a default constructor also. Okay, so box double w 0 h double h 0 double d 0 means takes three value, width, height, and depth. Okay, and all three, when you don't pass any of them, all values will be assigned to 0. Default values are there already here. Okay, so if you pass some values, that will be assigned to width, height, and depth, right? Otherwise zeros will be assigned. So we can see that this, because all three can be default, we can have many variation of call. Okay, call of the parameter. First of all, I can define default constructor. Now, like I can create an object with default constructor like box 1. So I'm not passing anything. When I don't pass anything, compiler will invoke this constructor automatically, but initialize the values with 0 0 0 simply. Okay, also second variation, box 2 is object, and I just empty parenthesis. This is also empty because it's another variation of default constructor. I am not passing any argument here. All right, so it will again call this, automatically will invoke this constructor, but again all the values will be zeros because no parameter is passed. Third, I'm only once passing one parameter. Okay, that means the first parameter is w, right? So width will be 5, or rest will take default value, so 5 0 0. Okay, and third one I'm passing all the values, so all default values will be overridden. So w will width, height, and depth all will be of value 10. Okay, so you can combine the using default value, we can define only one constructor which will do the task of default constructor as well as parameterized constructor. Okay, so here is an example of destructor. I will not discuss more about destructor here. I will discuss more about destructor when I cover the topic polymorphism, runtime polymorphism. So, but let's, for an example, for a simple demonstration, let's see an example of a destructor. So simply I'm printing here when an object is destroyed. I'm just printing here object is destroyed. You see that in the destructor only one task, object destroyed. Okay, all right. So when I'm creating object is created. All right. So let's see. We'll see the demonstration of these two programs after this demonstration. So what we do here, we create objects, okay, via dynamic memory allocation using new operator here. So distance, a pointer variable to the distance, let's say pointer to an object star ob1 equal to new distance. All right, and let's say I say get distance, and I do show distance. Okay, so to print the values. Okay, so all this thing, then delete, right? Then I create another object, then I call these functions, okay, get distance and show distance. Okay, so get distance will take the input and show distance will print the values, right? And then delete. So you know that why here I am explicitly deleting the objects. So that means these two delete statements are going to invoke this destructor automatically, okay, and print that object destroyed. Okay, we can give some many things, but only for demonstration I have given simple statement that object is destroyed. Let's see this demonstration of these two examples, the previous one the default and this one. Okay, so should be first one should be default. No. Okay, so I'll show within that only. So vi s4 default constructor. All right, I think this will go to parameterize vi s4 parameterized constructor. All right, we'll demonstrate within this only. So what I will do, so this is the version of default constructor and parameter, combination of both using default values, right? This is the combination. So this can help us to make all the calls. Okay, so I can make, okay, create object, okay, by invoking default constructor. I can create objects also using parameter constructor. So when I create object dist1 dist3, it is going to invoke this constructor automatically, but the values will be 0 and 0.0. But it comes when it comes to this distance 11 and 6.25. okay, so yes, I am just printing the values only here. Okay, so let's see the output. Okay, so this is calling for the third the third parameter. Just to see where it is done. Okay, yeah, guess distance. When I'm calling guess distance for distance 1 and distance I think only for distance 1. Okay, so distance 3 I will try to show that all old values only. Okay, let's see. So okay, so feet, let's say I'll say 8 feet, let's say 9.2 inches. Okay, so distance 1 is because initially distance 1 is object is created but initialized to value 0 0, but I have invoked the function called distance 1 get distance, okay, to initialize the value, just after the creation of distance 2, okay. So it will initializing the value. So distance 1 is updated after the initialized value is 0 0. Distance 3 remains the same, okay. I think distance 3 we have not called anything. Yes, not called the distance 3 value. All right, so what happens here? Let's see the output. Okay, so distance 3 remains the 0. I think it should print here. I think I should just a minute, I'll print it here so that you can see. I'll make this combination here first before this addition. Okay, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6. Okay. So I'll do 7yy, and I'll just let me print here first. Okay, I'll first print, then I'll execute this thing. Okay, so okay, now let's see. Okay, so this is the initial values. Initially distance 1 is 0 feet 0 inch, distance 3 is 0 feet 0 inch, distance 2 is invoked created via parameterized constructor, so its values are initialized to 11 and 6.25. okay, this feet in inches separated by hyphen, it's not minus. Okay, so I'm giving, let's say, 8 feet, and as I said, let's say 5.2 inches. Okay, for this will be updated for distance 1. So distance 1 is updated with 8 feet 5.2 inches. Okay, distance 2 already we know 11 and 6.25. So resulting is distance 3 is 19 feet 11.45 inches. Okay, that's the result. So resulting value is updated in distance 3. Okay, so here is a demonstration of parameterized constructor with default values. Okay, not only we are using parameterized constructor, but we are also using default values. Okay, this is an example. And coming to the demonstration of destructors. S4, I think we should have named destructor. Yes, we have destruct. So the program is this. Okay, the destructor. Let us see how the object, whenever object is created, it will print object is created, then it will print the take the values and print it, then destroy it. Okay, only for this will be repeated for this 2 objects. Okay, so okay, all right. So first an object is created. Okay, object 1. Then we asking is feet for a feet. Let's 4 feet 4 inches, for example. So object, so 4 feet 4 inches is demonstrating that this is the value of the using the show distance. Okay, the function was our show distance. So using show distance, it shows the data. Then when we call delete object, then it automatically invoke the destroyer, and the destructor prints object destroyed. Then second object is created, so automatically it invokes the construct of the second object to print object is created. Now it is asking using set distance, it is asking the feet value. Let's say 5. Let's say 5. So again it displaying, and when I use delete explicit, because here I am deleting or destroying the objects explicitly. Okay, means freeing of the memory there. So at that time it is calling, it's automatically calling the destructor. Just a demonstration to show that how destructors works. So we can do all the operation that is required, like free memory or to perform some computational task before this object is destroyed. That can be performed inside a destructor, and destructor will have a tilde just before the class name to identify, to define it. Okay, the name you should remember. Okay, constructor take the class name, and destructor the class name with a tilde on the in the beginning. Okay, right. So let us keep our discussion for this discussion here, and we'll continue our discussion of different area of object initialization and pointer to an object, and especially the copy constructor, because we have discussed about the default constructor and parameterized constructor here. Copy constructor is again a special type of constructor. We'll discuss about copy constructor in the next session. Thank you all.